In our last story, the arrow that killed Achilles missed. Achilles survived the fall of Troy, killed the Trojan prince Aeneas before he could escape, and unknowingly erased the legendary founder of Rome from history. He returned to Greece not as a fallen hero, but as a living legend. The alliances, trade networks, and military machine he built became the foundation of a new Mediterranean superpower known as the Achillean League. And 800 years later, that machine would fall into the hands of a young king from Macedon. His name was Alexander. And unlike our timeline, he wasn't starting from scratch. History remembers Alexander the Great as a blazing comet across the ancient world. Born in 356 BC to King Philip II of Macedon, he was tutored by Aristotle, ascended the throne at 20 after his father's assassination, and in just over a decade, carved out an empire stretching from Greece to the edge of India. He crushed the Persian Empire at Granicus, Issus, and Gaugamela. He burned Persepolis. He founded dozens of cities, named Alexandria. He marched his exhausted army to the Indus River, defeated King Porus and his war elephants, then turned back when his troops finally mutinied. At 32, he died in Babylon, probably from fever, poison, drink, or some combination of all three, leaving behind a fractured realm that splintered among his generals. In our timeline, Alexander was extraordinary. In this one, he was inevitable. By the time Philip II of Macedon sired his prodigy in 356 BC, the world Achilles left behind had already hardened into something formidable. The Achillean League was no loose collection of squabbling city-states. It was an organism. Trade fleets flew the black and gold banner of the Myrmidons. Standardized silver coinage stamped with a stylized heel moved from port to port across the Mediterranean. Roads engineered with layered gravel and camber allowed messengers to cross from Athens to Pella in 4 days instead of 12. Academies in Corinth and Thebes taught not only Homer, but practical mechanics. Siege engines refined through centuries of border conflict, ship designs that sliced through the Aegean like knives, and battlefield medicine advanced enough that surgeons could amputate, cauterize, and return a soldier to the line within hours. This was the world Alexander inherited. Not a fractured Greece, a machine. Alexander the Great inherited destiny. In 334 BC, he crossed into Asia Minor with 45,000 men who saw themselves as the direct sons of Achilles' Myrmidons. No desperate scavenging, supply fleets shadowed the coast. Mobile forges kept weapons sharp. Cartographers from the rebuilt academy at Troy produced maps so precise they read the land like an open scroll. The Battle of the Granicus wasn't a risky charge, it was a massacre. Issus followed. Darius III fled, but Alexander never paused. With reliable grain ships and veteran phalanxes, he swallowed the Persian Empire whole. And unlike our timeline, there would be no mutiny at the Hyphasis River. His soldiers had been raised on the myth of the unbroken heel. They saw endless glory ahead, endless riches, endless conquest. Alexander smashed through the Hindu Kush, shattered the Indian kingdoms, and sailed down the Indus. The Mauryan Empire never coalesced. Instead, Hellenic garrisons and trading posts spread like wildfire across the subcontinent. By age 30, Alexander stood at the edge of the known world. Then he made the decision that changed everything. He decided the world wasn't big enough. And he lived. The fever in Babylon never claimed him. Instead, Alexander returned west as a hardened 34-year-old conqueror with a son already born to his Persian wife Statera, Neoptolemus, named for Achilles' own child. Over the next decade, he transformed the League into something far more dangerous, a federal empire. Its spiritual heart stood in a rebuilt Troy. Its administrative capital sat in Babylon. Its intellectual powerhouse was an expanded library of Alexandria that received wagon trains of captured knowledge from every conquered palace, temple, and royal archive. When Alexander finally died at 48, still vigorous, still planning future campaigns, he left behind something no ruler in history had ever achieved. An empire that didn't immediately collapse. No successor kingdoms tearing one another apart. No century of fragmentation. The Achillean Council of Strategoi kept the core intact while allowing regional kings to govern beneath the black and gold banner. That single difference, Achilles surviving, Rome never rising, created consequences almost impossible to comprehend. Without Rome dominating the Mediterranean, the engine never slowed. Carthage survived as a humbled but wealthy trading partner. Its fleets were no match for League vessels equipped with Latine sails, reinforced hulls, and centuries of naval innovation. The Phoenician script evolved into a common Mediterranean alphabet used from Spain to Bengal. Philosophy didn't stagnate. It fused. Greek reason met Persian administration, Egyptian engineering, and Indian mathematics in the great halls of Alexandria and Corinth. By 150 BC, scholars were accurately calculating the Earth's circumference, building crude steam-powered pumps for mining operations, and using increasingly sophisticated lenses to study the heavens. War evolved too. Constant frontier conflicts drove relentless innovation. Steel production in Anatolia boomed centuries ahead of schedule. Watermills powered grain processing and early textile industries. Battlefield medicine advanced through necessity. Antiseptic wine washes, herbal anesthetics, and organized triage dramatically reduced casualties. The average Achillean soldier lived longer, fought harder, and carried knowledge home with him. Exploration exploded. By 50 BC, expeditions pushed beyond the Pillars of Hercules into the Atlantic. They returned with tales of western lands, unfamiliar crops, and civilizations previously unknown to the Mediterranean world. Trade routes circled Africa. Crude magnetic compasses, refined through eastern contacts, guided ships across open ocean. The concentration of power was intoxicating and dangerous. A single ruling idea dominated the League: the Achillean Imperative. Glory through excellence. No hesitation, no surrender, no mercy to weakness. The philosophy produced extraordinary achievements in art, science, engineering, and statecraft. It also produced monsters. Some emperors viewed themselves as living incarnations of Achilles. Others burned libraries that challenged their authority. Philosophical schools split between expansionists who saw endless conquest as humanity's destiny, and reformers who warned that unchecked power inevitably invited catastrophe. By 100 AD, when the first large Chinese merchant fleets made meaningful contact with the Mediterranean world, they found a civilization that seemed almost impossible. Cities illuminated by early gas lighting. Blast furnaces producing steel on a massive scale. Aqueduct systems turning arid regions green. Woodblock presses reproducing copies of the Iliad, the epics of the machine, and technical manuals for engineers across the empire. Most astonishing of all, they found a federal civilization governed not by a single emperor, but by a council of 9, representing Greek, Persian, Egyptian, Indian, African, and Iberian spheres of influence. The Chinese called it the Empire of the Unbroken Heel. They traded silk for steel, ideas for ideas, knowledge for knowledge. Then they sailed home deeply unsettled. Fast forward the madness. No Roman Empire means no centralized spread of Christianity as we know it. Mystery cults, Greek Buddhist philosophies, revived Egyptian traditions, and countless local religions blend, compete, and evolve into something far more pluralistic, and often far more volatile. The Library of Alexandria never burns in the same way. Knowledge compounds, century after century. Europe, as we recognize it, never emerges. Instead, a hyper-advanced Mediterranean core exports its influence outward. By 500 AD, oceanic empires are crossing the Atlantic with steel, gunpowder, and navigational technology centuries ahead of schedule. Potatoes and maize arrive early enough to prevent many of the famines that plagued our own Middle Ages. Literacy spreads because the machine demands educated administrators, engineers, merchants, and soldiers. The Renaissance? It happens in 300 BC. The Industrial Revolution? It sparks unevenly by 600 AD in pockets of Anatolia and along the Nile, driven by water power, coal, and relentless competition between regions of the federal system. And yet the world is not a utopia. The machine Achilles accidentally created was built on a simple principle. Forward, always forward. Conquer, build, expand, accelerate. For centuries, it worked. The empire grew richer, smarter, stronger. Every generation inherited more than the last. But no civilization in history had ever moved this quickly, and no civilization had ever carried so much momentum. The modern era that eventually emerges looks nothing like ours. Different powers, different religions, different technologies arriving centuries out of order. A world richer in some ways, smarter in others, more advanced in bursts, yet haunted by the original sin of that missed arrow. An engine built for glory that never learned how to stop accelerating. One small change in a muddy Trojan field. Achilles lives. Rome dies unborn. Alexander inherits the machine. And the rest of history becomes unrecognizable. The arrow missed. The universe kept aiming.